Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, show on Doordarshan, India's national broadcaster, about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations, how India pursues its core national interests while also looking out for the global public good. Viewers, in this episode, we are taking up the theme of 9 years of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's good governance with a special emphasis on energy security and energy diplomacy. Energy is the lifeblood of the world's most populous nation, India, which is of course also the fastest growing major economy. And to secure energy supplies, predictable, stable energy, this is a very, very fundamental task of the nation. And spearheading it is none other than my guest in the studio today. Let me introduce you to him, very esteemed guest, Hardeep Puri. Hardeep Puri is Union Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas and concurrently Minister for Housing and Urban Affairs. He is a long-time diplomat from the Indian Foreign Service for more than 4 decades. He has served the nation with great distinction before becoming Member of Parliament and Minister, and also an author, well-known books on the United Nations and on global politics. Hardeep ji, it's a great honor to have you here, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Hardeep ji, 9 years, 2014 to 2023, we have seen monumental transformations under Prime Minister Modi's leadership. And you have seen this, you were earlier in Civil Aviation Ministry, now Petroleum and Natural Gas. And when you look at the energy scene in these last 9 years, there have been major global changes and developments, a lot of volatility, geopolitical fluctuations, and yet India seems to be steadily making progress in securing these supplies for our vast and growing population. And I'd like you to start with Prime Minister Modi's overall guidance and leadership and the effect it has had on our energy security, sir. And what is it that he has brought to the table? What is the mandate he has given you in particular that you're able to navigate all these problems and provide for our people?
No, I'm happy to do so. Let me just share with you one overriding thought I have, is that 9 years prior to what I call the Modi era, prior to 2014, the very people who are today hailing India's economic performance, those who are talking about the Indian decade, I'm talking about Morgan and Stanley, they had a characterization of India being part of the fragile 5 economies. Now that fragility, I'm with other audiences, I'll say, when you are not sure about the endurability of contents, then you put a label on that, fragile, handle with care. To have come from that point of fragile 5, not only to the 5th largest economy in the world today, but within kissing distance of becoming the 4th largest and the 3rd largest in terms of current performance and in terms of what is projected. I mean, we ended the previous financial year at 7.2% rate of growth. And the World Bank, I saw today, is predicting India will grow at about 6.3 or 6.5% the next year. Now, given the overall, how did we get there? First and foremost, I think credit needs to be given at the fact that we have a very different kind of political leadership today. You have in office a person who served with great distinction as the Chief Minister of an important state, which met many, which during that period of his 12-13 years saw many challenges. So he came on with hands-on experience. Then when he assumed responsibility, there are many challenges which he had already conceptualized. I mean, on the urban side, previous governments thought that the urban space, the West called us reluctant urbanizers. People said it's a nuisance, the votes come from elsewhere. A mindset was still conditioned by rural development, etc. He embraced urbanization as an opportunity. In other words, within the challenge, he grasped the opportunity. That's one. But coming to petroleum and natural gas, you said something in your preambular opening remarks about energy being the lifeline of the Indian economy. It's a lifeline of the global economy. Absolutely. But if you look at what's happening in the world today, you will see, I'm simplifying it, that the world consumes about 100 million barrels of oil crude oil in a day. India consumes about 5 million barrels, but the world is almost flat in terms of demand. World demand, even when things are good, was growing only at 1%. Today, you have question marks on how many of the larger economies, I mean in terms of Arthvyavastha, in terms of economic size, Germany, UK, France, there are even question marks about the US economy. I mean, I read the Wall Street Journal recently, several reasons. Is the US going to head towards
A recession.
a recession? Several reasons why it will, several reasons why it don't. In the end, you don't know. I'm convinced the US will not. Then you have, if you define recession as quarter on quarter negative growth, Germany is self-declared in recession. The other economies in Europe are precariously balanced. India, on the other hand, even at the best of times, our growth is 3%, as against a global average of 1%. But I see India's growth growing even faster. Why? From 2014 to 2023, when you've moved from the 10th largest economy in the world to the 5th largest economy, your per capita income has doubled. And I said this, and some educated erstwhile colleagues didn't understand it. I am not saying that you're going to be a $27, $28 trillion economy by 2040. I'm not saying it. I'm saying Ernst & Young is saying it. Now, what you need to do is, what is a $27, $28 trillion economy? And I'm not talking in terms of facts and figures. Somebody wrote a very interesting piece, will we be a developed economy? It was in response to the Honorable Prime Minister saying कि 2047 जब हम 100 वर्ष हमारे हो जाएंगे as an independent country, हम एक विकसित देश बनेंगे. What is a viksit desh? A developed country? Is there any definition on that? I have spent nearly 4 decades in multilateral diplomacy. I know there is a listing of 37 countries or maybe less who are characterized as least developed. When they grow, they graduate, they cease to be least developed, they become developed country. Similarly, developing countries, when they don't want to be classified as developing countries. Now here, wait a minute. Ours is a unique case. There are countries which are today $15, $16 trillion economy, but they want to call themselves a developing country. Why? Because they think that there are some benefits, some goodies out there which will, some concession with. Frankly, I think if you're a $15, $16 trillion economy, your mindset should not be there at all. This is the first time I've come across a political leader who says, I'm willing to renounce my developing country thing because I think by 2040, and he's totally right. So if you look at the Ernst & Young prediction, it says by 2047, you will be a $27, $28 trillion economy. Submission I make to you is, if from moving from the 10th position to the 5th position, your per capita income has doubled and you're still slightly less than $4 trillion economy. If you go from 4 trillion to 10 trillion to 20 trillion and 27 trillion, how many times will your per capita income go up? It will go up at least 6 to 8 times. Okay? These are all projections. And these guys talk about algebra in economics. I mean, they don't have the undergraduate economics student sense. When you are a $10 trillion economy, your per capita consumption as a function of your per capita income goes up. A person who earns $10,000 per capita will not accept the kind of resources or facilities you have available in Sector X. The beauty of India is that the Prime Minister was able to revamp the health sector at the time of the pandemic, when everything else was going around wrong around us. We had a vaccine manufacturing capacity in the public sector between 2004 and 14. They dismantled it. I'm not going into the whys of it. All I'm trying to tell you is, starting from scratch, domestic vaccine manufacturing, you've distributed what? 220 crore plus. You've manufactured and distributed free. This is just one sector.
And to over 100 countries.
I'm coming to that. In my last association with the UN, so there are 193 countries in the world. South Sudan was the 193rd state. I was looking at the figure, about 100 countries have received vaccines from India. Some are part of commercial arrangements, the least developed poorer countries as part of bilateral assistance, etc. Look at it. Now let's move from health sector to connectivity, which I think is a very major indicator of whether a country is developed or not. Again, I'm not going into the debate. Today, there are very small countries which could be called city-states, very high per capita income, but they still like to be called developing. Because they say they're part of an informal group in the GATT or the WTO. But here we are saying that we don't need that. We are going in that direction, all right? Which means you're not saying no to multilateral financial processes or assistance, but we are saying we are developing this model on our own. Let me go to connectivity. You know, our airport privatization plans, it has unfolded, especially in the latest, without any support from the government. You've got a model, all right? We did well out of the, Delhi airport privatization in 2006 or 8. Mumbai, one was GVK, the other thing I was GMR, etc. And you got about 28,000 crores out of that, admittedly done. Then we used it to privatize. If you look at our airports, they're some of the best in the world today. And if you look at air connectivity, you know, when I was civil aviation minister, which I held from, I think, 2019 to 21, the worst period when the pandemic was in full force, you had to fly in 1,500 tons of medical equipment, Vande Bharat flights, mission. God knows how many people we, 3 crore or so many people we repatriated, brought them back. You made 74 airports before 2014. Today you made another, in 9 years you made another 74. And I saw my colleague Mr. Scindia's statement in some interaction. He said, within 5 years, you'll have a total of 200. In other, not 148, 200, 220 airports, heliport, etc. Look, it's a country on the move. Why does this happen? It happens because you have a hands-on Prime Minister who takes a monthly meeting called Pragati. I don't know whether you're aware of it.
Yes.
You're aware of it. He personally reviews that sector. I sat through a review meeting with him when he looked at what's happening in the oil and gas sector. He wants to review. Now, if you have political commitment and dedication at the apex of the system, everybody else is on call. I mean, you get some things done well, some things get delayed because ultimately you're the largest democracy. I mean, if you were not a democracy, I'm now going into another debate, people would not be able to hurl the kind of vicious stuff at you. And yet, so whether it comes to acquisition of land for projects, whether it comes to development schemes, the facts speak for themselves. And I think these 9 years have been unlike any other 10 years or anything earlier. And my concluding comment is, in the year 1700 or thereabouts, the Mughal Empire had designated some of our local states as Jagat states. What does it mean? Bankers of the world. Why? Because their resources were bigger than the economy of the United Kingdom as then. And they were constantly borrowing from these guys till we got into,
colonial
190 years of colonialism, where from a contribution of 25% to the global GDP, you went down to single digit or in single 2 or 3% in 1947. You're lifting that up. And say if by 2047, the bahut dur hai, I would say this $10 trillion economy will come much before that, and $20 trillion economy, but you're surely on the path which has been set out of becoming a Viksit Desh by then.
It's indeed a historic era, Hardeep ji is saying, and I think most people of India and most sane observers around the world would also agree. Hardeep ji, yes, we are on the trajectory, upward trajectory, no doubt about it. Now coming to the energy part, you have defined energy security, and I quote, availability, supply, predictability, stability and affordability. Now, given these rising consumption levels that you just projected, what is our strategy and roadmap, and what exactly have we done in the last 9 years, and what is going to happen in the coming decade, where we are very much hopeful that Modi's leadership is going to take the country further?
See, what you described, I call that a trilemma. Availability, we're a large country, you can't afford any gap or shortfall in supply, because the consequences, we are also a very voluble, raucous democracy, there'll be a lot of noise. Affordability, prices haven't gone up for 1 year. And sustainability. Now, on the availability, there are two issues. One is our domestic E&P has to go up. But here the gestation periods are very long. The decisions that we started taking, Modi ji assumed responsibility in 2014. From about 2018, steps started taking place. We are seeing the results now. Gas production has gone up by 18% last year, 18% this year. E&P, why would anybody come and invest in your exploration and production, if your psychology is कि अच्छा तुम अपना पैसा लगाओ, invest करो, when we find the oil, वो तो हमारा है, economic nationalism. So we
You have to incentivize. Yeah.
no. First of all, if you have a total sedimentary basin of 3.5 million square kilometers, most of it was closed. So 1 million square kilometers has been opened up to prospecting, for exploration, number one. Number two, data. Now we've got the data, put it into a data repository available to everybody. And the mindset is changed. Please come and explore. If you don't want to use your own resources, we will in fact incentivize you to do it. All that is beginning to now pay this thing. But meanwhile, none of our increased consumption or increased requirement in the midst of increasing refining capacity from 252 million metric tons per annum, I think we are already up to 310, 320 already plans, but we want to take it up to 450 million metric tons per annum. None of this is being allowed to undermine the sustainability, the green transition. Again, give me three quick comments. Biofuels, ethanol, with the best will in the world, the government before 2014 couldn't take it up beyond 1.4% biofuel mixing.
They had that blending goal since 2003 or something.
I was part of it. I was ambassador to Brazil.
Nothing concrete.
Nothing happened because the policy mix wasn't there. Up to 2014, only 1.4. Along came Modi ji, defined 10% target by November 22. It was done 5 months in advance. Target of 20% biofuel blending by 2030, we brought it to 2025. You know how much money we saved by way of import bill on 10% blending? 40,000 or 41,000 crores. And we were able to pay our farmers 42,500 crores. I am very fond of giving two statistics lately. 1% of sustainable aviation fuel. We just had one flight coming from Pune. But if we make that the norm, you'll require 14 crore liters additional of ethanol. Now we are already going towards 20% blending. We've already in April introduced something called an E20, a 20% blended fuel. I thought it was available in 100 petrol bunks. It's available in 600. And I'm told it will be available in 1,000. So you will have 20% blending by 2025. Now,
and renewables also, sir?
No, I'm coming. Compressed biogas. We have a second generation plant making ethanol from agricultural waste in Panipat, if I remember correctly. And we've got second generation, third generation plants, agricultural waste, bamboo. So this is a country on the move without the increase in consumption. Now somebody asked me the other day, how can you make ethanol more? I said, first of all, people, you know, sugar prices go up and down.
Yeah.
Now, if the sugar mills get more feed, plus we are using diversifying the feed, you know, broken agricultural, rice husk, grain, agricultural waste, bamboo, you diversify. Your agriculture gets an opportunity arising out of that. And I think the good news is that this story is spreading now. The story is
across the country, yeah.
Now the more people come, one state came to me, you know, we don't have anything else. You've given us only 17 lakh liters. They said, we gave them 34 lakh liters. Now you tie up. And states that are slightly slow, we'll give it to somebody else. You see, you can't make ethanol in Chennai and use it in Haryana. You have to, if you are making the ethanol in Haryana, you use it in Haryana or in the near vicinity. Right, I think all compressed biogas, Gobardhan scheme, they're all on the move.
Sir, let me now take you to the diplomacy part. You have said that we need a more comprehensive and intensified engagement with all countries in the sector of energy, including Russia. And this has become a so-called controversy since the Russian war in Ukraine. And I'd like you to tell the audiences how we have defied calls and pressures from various sides. You've said that pressure, if your mindset is wired not to take pressure, we don't take pressure. So what is it about PM Modi and Modi Sarkar and you, the way you've been able to counterpunch? I asked Dr. Jaishankar on this show as well about this, why is it that we have stuck to our ground? You've in fact even made a moral case for buying oil from any source, because we are still dependent on imports at present. So I'd like you to tell us what gives us spines in our energy diplomacy.
First of all, let me demystify this. We started diversifying the sources of supply for many years. We used to import from a total of 27 countries. I think we are importing from 39 countries now, number one. Number two, the world is changing. For instance, we did not buy more than 0.2% of our requirement from the Russian Federation when we ended fiscal year 31st March 2022.
Right.
And those military operations began on, I think, 24th February. So by that time, we were only buying that. Suddenly, after that, we bought more. Then some other supplier came in, sold us more. Look, if we were buying, let's say, ballpark figure, 5 million barrels of crude oil for consumption every day, we had about 6 or 7 suppliers roughly giving us 800,000 barrels, etc. Start with, I don't see somebody who's a leader. I spent 39, 40 years in the Foreign Service.
Yeah.
I worked with many prime ministers. I've met other global leaders when we were presiding over the Security Council. First of all, the man, not the prime minister, but the man. I don't think anyone anywhere in the world is in a position to subject him to pressure, because I don't think he's wired like that. I've been saying that for a long time. And if the leader is clear, I'm very clear in my mind, provided this thing is clear. Whom in a democracy, whom is your primary responsibility and duty to? My submission is to your consumer.
Absolutely.
If I go to my consumer and tell my consumer that, bhai, wo aisa hai, थोड़ी सी स्थिति बदल गई है, अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्थिति में बदलाव आ गया, अब पेट्रोल जो है 80 रुपए पर नहीं मिलेगा, अब 150-200 रुपए पर. He'll look at you on the face and he'll say you are incompetent, you don't know your job.
People expect, yeah.
No. So first of all, since April of next year, prices have not gone up in India.
2022, yeah.
2022 to 2023, April of last year, we are now in the middle of June, prices have not gone up. So even those people who are talking about rising prices, I submit to you, sir, they are philosophizing with a false conscience. If you look at the prices anywhere in the world, India is amongst the lowest, number one. I'm not including those who are big energy producers. Now, if you produce made oil, you can't make it cheaper because it's in your backyard. But more than that, how did we get this hold on prices? International gas prices, or what is called the Saudi CP, went up 236 or 300%. We only allowed the increase to take place up to 60-70%. Then what happened in terms of prices? OMCs are good corporate citizens, full marks to them. When they saw international prices shooting, they could have easily said, yeah, we have to make our profit. We will also increase the prices. They held back. There were under recoveries. They lost money. On gas, by the way, collectively, they claim they lost 28,000 crores. We compensated them for 22,000 crores. It's not that we don't know that they're losing money. So they lost money and they still held back. But on top of that, the Honorable Prime Minister reduced the excise duty on 2 occasions. One in November of 2021 and in May of 2022. I think cumulatively the price of diesel, petrol and diesel came down by 6 rupees and 13 rupees collectively. And then the BJP states reduced their VAT. Now, why I'm saying they're philosophizing with a false conscience? Look at the people who didn't do it. The talk about rising prices invariably comes from those who practice freebie politics, then don't want to reduce their price or raise it. Now, I don't want to belabor a point. You know, this is a revenue raising thing with the states, but then let's all look each other in the eye and at least ensure that we are talking on the same.
So you have even written a book called Delusional Politics, and you have found the malady in many countries, and we are seeing some of it in our states as well. Coming to the OPEC cartel and the group, I mean, you have been dealing extensively, negotiating with them, and while Russia's share has grown, there are still important players in the West Asia, Middle East region who continue to be major suppliers for us. And you have said that you would want them to have a sense of calm, predictability and realism in the energy market to make it more affordable for consumers. We have been pushing them for what we call responsible pricing for a long time. But OPEC seems to have its own logic, and often they resort to production cuts in order to raise the prices. And even the US has been somewhat unsuccessful in persuading them. So how successful do you think we have been in getting across our point of view to them, sir?
My starting point is, I think if you have a resource, energy, it's your sovereign decision how you want to price it.
Of course.
That's your decision. I think it'll be wrong for me to come and say you are growing apples and sell them at this price. But I do say one thing to them, and I've repeatedly said it, and I've said it in the open. Make sure you don't have a self-fulfilling prophecy. That as it is, due to the pandemic, there was a lot of additional liquidity which went into the markets. This additional liquidity came in the form of the stimulus packages, etc. In India, we were very wise that we did it more in a more productive manner instead of injecting large amounts of cash in. So you already had inflationary pressures. You already have such inflation that if you have high oil prices in addition to that, it will move from inflation to the big R. So all that I've been telling people, including to the OPEC plus major players, and saying, please, they said, how do you think and when would it happen? One was very interesting conversation. I said, you know, if high oil prices, you know, there's been a changing narrative. When I was in ADIPEC, I think in
Abu Dhabi, in
Abu
UAE.
Dhabi, it was in 21 October. I had just become minister in July. Then they said, you know, by this first quarter of next year, or the last quarter of this financial year, first quarter of next year, oil prices will come down. They didn't. Then came February 2022, then they said another. But the more interesting thing is, they've been cutting production, 1.6 million barrels in the last decision, 1 million. And the markets are
not responding. They continue to the price.
There has to be a reason for that.
It's below $80, yeah.
No, today 72. Indian basket is 72. No, there has to be a reason. I don't speculate. I think two things have happened. One is that the expected revival in demand in some large economies is not taking place.
Correct.
That is one. But there's another reason. There's a lot of more oil coming in from the United States, from countries like Brazil, countries like Guyana. I don't know how much it is. But it's an interesting situation. Normally, somebody says it's a 1 million barrels a day production cut is going to take place. The news should send the
prices soaring up. Yeah, it doesn't happen. Yeah.
So it means that some things that we say and do. Look, I am not quarreling. If you are a producing country and you have your own economic requirements, you may want the price to be not at 70 but at 80. That's your concern. But on the other hand, if I am a consuming country, I detach myself from both my role as being associated with a consuming country and somebody else's role who is associated with the producing country. I am not willing to believe that it is in one's interest to reduce production and raise prices, and it's in the other's interest too. It's not even my interest for our oil prices to go down too low, because then investments don't make any sense on that.
Absolutely.
Because I am both a consuming, importing country, I'm also a producing country. If the price falls, like when the economic lockdown took place, it came down to $19.56 a barrel. Nobody will invest in that.
It's disastrous for investment. So on India being a producing country, I mean, this is of course on the anvil and it's the big, you know, future hope. You have said that we are expecting in 2023 alone investments worth $58 billion in energy exploration and production in our country. Now, you have been meeting with leaders of big Western majors, oil giants, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Total. What is the signal? What are you getting from them, sir? What do they want from India, and why are they so gung ho about India now, about investing in India now?
I would be very careful in using words. I wouldn't say they're gung ho. I think that we have got over a past situation where impediments were put in place consciously or unconsciously by the previous dispensations which were in the decision-making realm of discouraging people. People came and then they went away. Today, my narrative, the Honorable Prime Minister meets them, is very different. This is what we've done. Please let us know what more we need to do to tweak it to make it worthwhile for you. People are not going to come here to prospect for philanthropy, to be altruistic or philanthropic purposes because they want you to become more. They will come. There's money to be made. And look, there are a total of 4 or 5 big players there. There are 4 or 5 big players here. They have to learn to interact. I'm very happy that all the companies you named and some others, they are in active negotiations. Some have operative MOUs, some are coming in, and there's a by and large distribution of areas where they're going. Some of them are looking at the Andaman area, some of them are looking elsewhere. and things are beginning to move. I think that is the positive. So I don't use words like gung-ho, but I think it's all a positive. Even our own initiatives, you know, reforms in the gas sector, gas pricing. I mean, earlier you had a situation it's going to be loss for us. We looked at it. You were earlier determining gas pricing on 4 hubs. Okay, 2 of those hubs are not operational, and you were looking at the data once in a year, 6 months or so on, and you were using 1-year-old data to do this. What we've done now is we do it now, periodic reviews, every month. That is 15 days we look at the data, and we have a floor and we have a ceiling, and look at the results. The results are, so if you have a government which is willing to work with the stakeholders in order to be able to make it worth their while, people will come in. If you look at where else in the world, green hydrogen is a case in point.
Yes,
green hydrogen. Green hydrogen will work in India because government is actively conceptualized an ecosystem which is designed to encourage it. First of all, green hydrogen will succeed where you have demand, where you have a short consumption, okay, and where you have the capacity to produce. I am not willing to believe that in some desert 10, 15,000 kilometers away, you can make green hydrogen and transport it. It does not lend itself to that. So India, you have all 3. And the government has given, I think 19,700 under the PLI scheme for the manufacture of electrolyzers. Every electrolyzer manufacturer in the world is here today. Startups are working on it. But you have also demonstrated that the price of clean green energy solar, you can bring it down from 25 cents to 3 cents.
Per unit,
Per unit. Once you can do that and you have water and you got an electrolyzer, my friend, you've arrived.
Absolutely. Sir, now the question is, you've been also advocating that India can be a big supporter and can assist the energy needs not only of our own population but also of the global south. And you have said multiple times that we would like to share our innovations and all these things in the energy sector which are low cost and which can really benefit and bring about large scale transformation in fellow developing countries. So on this front, sir, I would like to mention a couple of things for our viewers. One is the India-Bangladesh Friendship Pipeline that has been inaugurated. There's also India-Nepal Petroleum Pipeline, and hopefully many others that we are going to lay across our region for energy connectivity and trans-border trade and all these things. Now this is where, as India's own production and refinery capacity and all these grow, I suppose we'll be able to do a lot more in terms of South-South cooperation. And on that front, India can also be a leader, sir. And what are your thoughts on? You've also mentioned that even at the G20 we can create large-scale, energy groupings centered around the interests of the global south, the voice of the global south. You've addressed them, energy ministers. So what is the signal you're getting from poorer countries and how are they looking up to India? Because traditional notion is India is a buyer of oil, India is a buyer of gas, India itself is dependent on outsiders. But now we're trying to turn it around and say India can actually help others too in these fields. These are big transformations.
No, there are 2 or 3 separate processes. When you talk of the global south, you have a much broader canvas in mind. When you talk about the Indo-Nepal pipeline, which when the Prime Minister of Nepal was here, we signed that. I exchanged an agreement with my counterpart from Nepal. Or you talk about Bangladesh. I mean, this is where energy will come in from a pipeline from us going into Nepal. There's already one pipeline. We are sending up 2 stations also. That's a very different kind of thing. Then you mentioned Bangladesh. But then, even where you don't have pipelines, like Sri Lanka, I think we've given something like $4 billion of credit in some form. I don't remember the exact figure.
Right. After the financial crash.
But today, India is not just oil and gas. I mean, there's something called Ujjwala. You've given 9 crore 60 lakh Ujjwala connections. I mean, at a time when, I was just now with the executive director of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, and he was saying that in his speech. What India has gone and done inside, in the cooking space, where the most pollution takes place, where our mothers and sisters are in the kitchen, that's one. But you've done
the solar.
That's also, but I mean, even Ujjwala. I mean, gas. I mean, we got 14,000 kilometers of pipeline in 2014. We are taking it up to 33,000. I mean, your gas LPG connections were 14 lakhs crores, and they are now 32.8 lakh crores. So India's story is on a much broader canvas than buying
the
oil.
fossil fuels,
First of all, our own oil. Look at your refining capacity. Refining capacity is 252 million metric tons. You're taking it up to 450. Somebody asked me this question the other day, but when you go away from fossil, no, your refineries will be making green hydrogen. But I think the real story is still to come. It is the green hydrogen fuel cell. Because as I said, if you bring down the cost of per unit of green solar energy and you've got electrolyzer manufacturing here, you can deal with scale.
So last question, you've already spoken about the transition to green. You've said that there are two worlds. There's the present world, the one which is still primarily dependent on fossil fuels, and then the world that is coming. And the bridge between this is the transition in the global scenario. India is rising at a time when this transition is happening. Your closing thoughts on how India is positioning itself as an energy power in the global order in this kind of transitional moment?
I'll give you three things. One is not my assessment. BP Outlook, International Energy Agency, they're all saying between 2020 and 2040, whatever increase in demand is going to come globally, 25% is going to come from India. So my friend, all I'm telling you is if 25% of the additional demand is going to come, you're already part of the discussion.
A big player,
yeah, so if 25% of the additional demand is also going to come from India, you're there. Secondly, I think you have demonstrated your commitment to those Paris goals, etc., etc. And everybody is today, what is the nature of the discussion? Yes, you got a net zero till 2070, but your major companies today, two of them sitting there, OMCs, GAIL and Oil India, they have 2040 commitment, and IOCL has a 2046 commitment. Now everybody says you should do it quicker, but there are guys who've taken 2050 commitment when they should be able to do it by 2025. So we are saying you also go forward, and then we will also come back. But that's, I'm not scoring points. I am saying India will ensure availability, affordability, and sustainability, because the world ultimately has to transition to green energy. I think that's an imperative, but it cannot transition through what I call abrupt decisions. Fossil fuels close one day. No, you have to accelerate. And I think the chairman, the executive director of the IEA made a very nice statement. He said that last year, because of the disruption of the war, Russia-Ukraine, last year was the fastest year in terms of the last few, in terms of the acceleration of transition to green energy. And India is that story.
So viewers, Hardeep Singh Puri ji is saying that India is on the move. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership, there are major changes that have happened, structural transformations. So many old policies have been revamped, new policies have been brought in, and now we are on the cusp of big change as a result of these transformations. I want to thank Minister Hardeep Singh Puri ji for sharing valuable insights and for giving us confidence, sir. You've served the nation with distinction both as a career diplomat and now in public life and in politics. We'd like your mission to succeed, because when your mission succeeds, India rises to the top, and that is our sincere hope. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me and having this discussion. And I said, this is the new India, the rising India, which is not only in the petroleum and natural gas sector, but if you look at a host of other sectors. And I'm sure that when you invite the line ministers there, whether it's fintech, digital inclusion, schemes, everywhere the focus of the Honorable Prime Minister is that those who are the most vulnerable in our society, that they must be given the cover and the space for them to rise. With that, India rises. Absolutely. There are already a large number of multimillionaires, billionaires, there are. And they will continue, because it's a democracy, it's an open economy. But when you have the base rising, as I said, if the per capita income goes up from doubling to 6 times, see where India will be. See where India will be. Viewers, we are all waiting for that. The Modi era is still on and is going to continue, and we are going to see massive transformations in the years to come. And let's think about energy transition, global energy changes, and India as an energy power. I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care.